fatherhood been treating? How good is that thing?
The first eight, 9 months, I was kind of thinking, I don't think he likes me very much.
Simon, I'm going to stick with you on this question because not only has the show changed the format, you as a father with a young one, your youngest, has that any new triumphs happened with?
He didn't announce it. He didn't explain it. He just disappeared from the world he had spent decades building. The cameras, the contracts, the crowds, all of it dropped overnight. And the people closest to him had no idea why. What happened inside that hospital room stayed hidden for months. A diagnosis, a truth that cracked Simon Cowell open in ways fame never could. His son Eric wasn't just changing Simon's schedule. He was changing the man himself.
This wasn't something that I was expecting, but, you know, it's all been good.
Piece by piece, quietly, completely. But the real story isn't about what Simon lost. It's about what he found and what it cost him to get there. Stay with us. The truth is more powerful than any headline ever told you. Something nobody wanted to say out loud. As Eric moved through his toddler years, Simon started noticing things. But small things at first, reactions and behaviors that didn't quite match what he saw in other children of the same age. They weren't dramatic. They were subtle. But for a man who had spent his entire career learning to observe people, to read a room, to spot what others missed, they were hard to ignore. When Eric was approaching his second birthday, he still hadn't started speaking. Other children around the same age were forming words, putting short sentences together, calling out to their parents with clear sounds. Eric stayed mostly quiet. Simon tried to push the concern aside. He reminded himself that children develop at different rates. He told himself Eric was simply taking his time. But the thought kept coming back. There were other signs. In busy places, restaurants, events, anywhere with crowds and noise, Eric would become overwhelmed in ways that were hard to predict. He would cover his ears. He would turn his face away. He would shut down in ways that left Simon feeling helpless, not knowing what to do or how to help. People around Simon offered reassurance. They told him that children all move at their own pace, that some kids just need more time to warm up to the world. Simon heard those words. He appreciated them. But they didn't quite get the feeling that had settled in his chest and refused to leave. He began reading. He searched online. He looked at articles and books on child development, trying to understand what might explain what he was seeing. The more he read, the more questions he had. Nothing gave him a clear answer. The pieces didn't fit together yet. But the picture was slowly becoming harder to look away from. And what struck Simon most was that Eric clearly understood more than people might assume. He picked up on things quickly. He noticed details. He had a sharp awareness of patterns and sequences. But the way he expressed all of that understanding was different. It didn't come through words. It came through looks, movements, and small gestures that required close attention to read correctly. Simon was already adjusting his life around Eric's needs before he fully understood what those needs were. He avoided taking Eric to loud or unfamiliar places. He kept events small and controlled. He made sure only trusted people were around. These weren't decisions made from a plan, they were instincts. And those instincts were telling him something important, even if he couldn't yet name it. On the night, everything became real. The moment that broke the waiting came during a family trip when Eric was 4 years old.
Simon Cowell giving us a rare, exclusive look inside his Beverly Hills home with girlfriend Lauren and their 4-year-old son Eric.
Simon had put the vacation together carefully. He wanted time away, real time, just family. No schedules, no cameras, no obligations. He wanted to see Eric somewhere new, somewhere warm and open. He thought a change of scenery might do them all good. What happened instead shook him to his core. The resort was beautiful by any standard, but for Eric, it was too much. The sounds were wrong. The food was unfamiliar. The schedule had changed. The people were strangers. Every small shift in his normal routine triggered a reaction. Eric didn't eat. He didn't sleep at his usual time. He became distressed in ways that no amount of comfort seemed to reach. One evening, the family was seated outdoors among other guests, and the terrace was full of people eating and talking. Background music played, dishes clinked, children ran between tables. To everyone else, it was a pleasant night. For Eric, it was unbearable. His hands flew to his ears. He began rocking back and forth in his chair. His face went somewhere else, somewhere unreachable. Simon sat beside him and tried everything he knew. Nothing worked. Eric had shut down completely. That night, after Eric had finally settled and fallen asleep, Simon called Lauren. They talked for a long time. They both knew, without needing to say it directly, that they couldn't keep waiting. They had to find out what was happening, not because they were frightened of what they might hear, but because not knowing was no longer an option. Eric needed more than they were currently giving him, and they had to understand how. Over the following months, they sought out specialists. Assessments were scheduled. Professionals spent time with Eric, watching him carefully, asking Simon and Lauren detailed questions about his behavior, his routines, and his reactions. The process was slow and thorough. Simon showed up to every appointment. He asked questions. He took notes. He did exactly what he had always done in business. He paid attention and refused to leave without understanding what he was dealing with. In December 2018, Simon walked into a consultation room to hear the results. The air in the room felt heavier than usual. He had prepared himself, or tried to. He knew roughly what the specialists were going to say. But knowing something is coming doesn't always make it easier to hear. The diagnosis was autism spectrum disorder. The words were clear. The specialists explained what they meant: that Eric's brain processed the world differently from most children his age. He had difficulty with speech. He reacted strongly to certain sounds and sensory experiences. He needed daily routines to feel safe and steady. These were not weaknesses. They were simply the way Eric's mind worked. The report also highlighted what Eric did well. He had a strong ability to spot patterns. He could stay focused on a single topic for extended periods of time. His memory for sequences was impressive. He picked up on details that others routinely missed. The specialists described his condition as moderate on the spectrum, meaning he would need significant support in certain areas, but also had real strengths that could grow with the right environment and the right guidance. So the life he built in its place. After the diagnosis, Simon's world reorganized itself around one central purpose. Every decision about work, about home, about time, ran through the same filter. What does Eric need? Back at their home in Malibu, Simon brought in professionals to redesign the space around Eric's sensory needs. Lighting was softened. Loud mechanical sounds were reduced wherever possible. Textures were adjusted throughout the house. Certain rooms were given specific purposes that fit Eric's routines. The home became something more than a place to live. It became a carefully constructed environment where Eric could feel steady and safe, where the world's unpredictability was reduced as much as possible. The daily schedule became the backbone of Eric's life. Mornings followed a consistent pattern, and therapy sessions filled regular slots throughout the week. Sometimes speech therapy, sometimes occupational therapy, sometimes both. Social interactions required planning. A play date that looked simple from the outside might involve hours of preparation behind the scenes, making sure every element was in place so Eric wouldn't become overwhelmed. Simon stopped taking certain kinds of work entirely. Long productions that would pull him away from home for extended periods were no longer on the table. He handed off responsibilities to people he trusted. He restructured his commitments so that Eric's therapy schedule and daily routines came first. Some of his colleagues took a while to understand the shift. A few didn't understand it at all. But Simon was no longer making decisions based on what the industry expected from him. And he also had to grieve quietly, privately, a version of fatherhood he had carried in his imagination. The casual bike rides on a sunny afternoon, the spontaneous conversations, the jokes only shared by a father and son, the sound of a child calling out freely and easily across a house. These things didn't come naturally with Eric. They had to be worked toward, slowly, one small step at a time. That grief was real. Simon acknowledged it without letting it take over. He had always been someone who moved forward rather than staying still, and he applied that same instinct here. He let himself feel the weight of it, and then he got back to work not on a television show or a music deal, but on understanding his son. He learned to read Eric's non-verbal communication, the looks, the gestures, in the small movements that carried meaning even without words. He learned which environments helped Eric feel calm and which ones didn't. He learned to notice the moments when something was building inside Eric before it became a crisis, and how to redirect or adjust quietly enough that the moment passed without becoming a full breakdown. Progress came in small pieces. A new word, a longer period of eye contact, a hug that lasted a few seconds more than usual. Each one meant something real. Each one confirmed that the effort was not wasted, that the right support, applied consistently over time, was making a difference. In 2019, rumors and speculation about Eric began appearing more frequently in entertainment media. Simon had stayed mostly quiet on the subject, choosing to protect Eric's privacy rather than feed the public conversation. But when a tabloid ran a story that crossed a clear line publishing photos of Eric during a distressing moment and framing it in a way that was unkind and uninformed, Simon decided to speak. His statement was short and measured. He confirmed that Eric had autism. Parents of autistic children reached out. Advocacy groups thanked him for using his public profile to say something useful. Educators and therapists noted that even a brief, honest statement from a well-known figure could shift the way people thought and talked about autism. But the attention that followed was also a reminder of the cost of speaking publicly. Every time Eric was photographed or appeared at an event, people looked more closely. Comments and speculation multiplied. Simon found himself managing two things at once: protecting his son's space while also contributing to a broader conversation that could genuinely help other families. He did his best to hold both. One of the most watched moments came during a Britain's Got Talent taping when Eric, seated beside his father, reached out and pressed the golden buzzer during a performance.
When you watch an audition, I'm sitting here thinking, I genuinely don't know what to say. When it's brilliant like this, it's just, words aren't really necessary. My son is literally going crazy right now. Anyone who thinks they deserve a golden buzzer.
The crowd reacted with warmth. Viewers at home responded the same way. It was a small, sweet moment that told a bigger story: that Eric was there, that he was present, that he was engaged with the world in his own way. What most people watching didn't know was how carefully that moment had been arranged. Every detail of the environment had been managed in advance: the sound levels, the seating, the people nearby, and the duration of Eric's time in that setting. Nothing was left to chance. What looked spontaneous was the result of careful preparation by a father who had spent years learning exactly what his son needed. The man behind the tough chair. Long before the golden buzzers and the packed auditoriums, Simon Cowell was simply a young man who believed in the music business more than anything else. Born on October 7, 1959, in London, England, he grew up watching the entertainment industry from close range. His father, Eric Cowell, worked as a music industry executive, and that world became Simon's classroom before it became his career. He didn't arrive at the top quickly. His early years included working as a runner on a film lot, pushing mail carts, and bouncing between low-level positions in the music world. He even had a short-lived record deal of his own that went nowhere. Sure, but those failures didn't break him. They sharpened him. He studied what worked and what didn't, and he built a quiet but certain belief that he knew how to spot real talent. By the late 1980s, Simon had joined BMG Music as an A&R consultant. The role fit him perfectly. He wasn't there to perform. He was there to judge, to find, and to push artists toward their best work. He helped develop acts, produced tracks, and began building a reputation as someone who told the truth, no matter how uncomfortable it made people. Then came 2001 and Pop Idol. Suddenly, millions of people were watching Simon Cowell deliver his opinions on live television every week. He didn't soften his words. He didn't smile to be polite. He said exactly what he thought, and somehow, audiences couldn't stop watching. The show was a massive success in the United Kingdom. And it wasn't long before the format crossed the Atlantic. American Idol launched in 2002, and Simon became one of the most recognized faces on American television. His chemistry with fellow judges Paula Abdul and Randy Jackson created something people genuinely looked forward to each week. The debates, the occasional tension, and Simon's dry humor gave the show an energy that felt real. But it was always Simon who drew the strongest reactions. People either admired his honesty or couldn't stand what they saw as cruelty. Either way, they kept watching. His production company, Seco Entertainment, a joint venture with Sony Music, became the engine behind some of the biggest acts in music. One Direction, who finished third on the X Factor in 2010, went on to become one of the best-selling boy bands of all time. Susan Boyle, whose audition on Britain's Got Talent in 2009 became one of the most watched online videos in history, was signed to Syco. Paul Potts, who won the first series of Britain's Got Talent in 2007, recorded his debut album through the same label. A life he never planned for. In 2013, Simon's personal life took a turn that nobody expected, least of all himself. He began a relationship with Lauren Silverman, a woman he had known socially for years. But Lauren was married at the time to Andrew Silverman, who was, by most accounts, a friend of Simon's. When Andrew filed for divorce and named Simon in the legal documents,
it's official! Simon Cowell's girlfriend Lauren Silverman has finally closed her divorce with ex-husband Andrew Silverman.
The story exploded in the press. Headlines ran for weeks. The story had all the ingredients tabloids love: fame, betrayal, and a complicated personal situation playing out in public. Simon didn't hide from it, but he also didn't add fuel to the fire. He stayed quiet and waited for things to settle. They settled faster than expected. The divorce was finalized privately in August 2013 without going to court. Simon was able to stay out of the courtroom proceedings entirely, which was a relief given the level of media attention already circling the story. Soon after, it became known that Lauren was pregnant with Simon's child. For a man who had said for years that he had no interest in becoming a father, that he was too set in his habits, too focused on work, too used to his freedom. This news was genuinely life-changing. Simon later recalled that the moment he saw the scan of his unborn son, something inside him shifted in a way he couldn't explain. It wasn't a thought. It was a feeling, on a pull toward something new and unfamiliar and completely outside his control. He described it as the moment when everything he thought he knew about himself started to quietly change. On February 14, 2014, Valentine's Day, Eric Philip Cowell was born. Simon chose the name deliberately. The Philip came from his own middle name, the Eric that was his father's name. His father, Eric Selig Philip Cowell, had died in 1999, and naming his son after him was a way of keeping that connection alive. It was a decision that carried real weight for Simon, and it told people close to him something important. This child wasn't just a surprise. He was something Simon was already choosing to hold close. Simon Cowell's story is not what most people expected from a man like him. But the toughest voice in the room turned out to be someone who could also sit quietly on a floor, lining up toy cars beside his son, and find more meaning in that moment than in anything the entertainment world had ever given him. Eric didn't change Simon's career. He changed Simon himself, and that is a much harder, much more important thing. If this story moved you, if it made you think about someone in your own life who sees the world differently, leave a comment below. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you haven't already, subscribe to this channel, because the stories we cover here are the ones that actually matter. See you in the next one.